In a world filled with information, it's easy to lose sight of important stories. Here at TVP World, we take a closer look at those whose stories captivate and teach us important lessons. My name is Sally Jastrzębska. Welcome to In Focus. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, the already difficult work of firefighters has become a mission that not many can handle. It often requires these brave souls to risk their lives in order to save those in danger. However, they don't just save lives, but also, by extension, their homeland. They work in difficult conditions with a lack of basic equipment and other necessities like water and food. Let's take a closer look at Ukrainian firefighters, who certainly deserve to be recognized for their hard work.
I solemnly swear to be self-sacrificing and valiant in saving endangered human life and all property, even at the risk of my own life. For you, beloved motherland, I would jump even into fire itself.
Every child believes in superheroes and extraordinary powers. When we grow up and that childlike innocence disappears, our respect is given to more real characters like doctors, lawyers or firefighters. During peacetime, people do not pay attention to the work of the army and soldiers, which, although very important, is carried out in the shadows. Because of this, it is the work of firefighters that is held in the highest regard by the public out of all the uniformed services. The situation changes dramatically during a war, when, colloquially speaking, the military plays first fiddle. Direct warfare means that all attention of the people and the media is focused on our heroic and brave soldiers. The work of firefighters is carried out sort of in secret. It's supplementary. The constant shelling, the explosions, the fires, the wounded and the killed. This is the daily life of a firefighter on the front lines. They too vowed self-sacrifice in the service of their fellow people and property. Even in peacetime, their work is something extraordinary and to be admired, but it is only in wartime that their heroism becomes clear.
For the past 3 years, the Kharkiv Garrison Fire Department has been working under constant enemy fire. The intensity of enemy missile and drone strikes is constantly increasing. They're hitting the city of Kharkiv and the surrounding towns. Rescue workers continue to work in the field. Unfortunately, the shelling's intensity has risen. Over the past week, we've lost 3 rescuers. They died while rescuing people.
In a conversation with Polish firefighters, we learned that in our country there are also sometimes difficult trips, difficult missions, but with time a person learns that you cannot approach them emotionally. You need to be focused and do your job to the best of your ability. What is happening in Ukraine is unimaginable. In Poland, after even the most difficult multi-hour missions, firefighters return to a heated firehouse, wash their clothes and eat a warm meal. The Ukrainians, unfortunately, often cannot afford such comforts. Yet these are basic human needs. War is something that takes away people's humanity. Until recently, Ukraine had only state rescue and firefighting units operating within the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. Due to decentralization attempts, volunteer units were formed to support professional firefighters in line with the Polish model. The support provided by Poles to Ukrainian firefighters is, in addition to numerous trainings, workshops and psychological support, mainly huge amounts of firefighting equipment. This is very important because despite all of this assistance, the equipment wears out much faster in the conditions they are faced with.
The equipment's condition is good enough. Firefighters work using modern rescue equipment. We cooperate with charities and are supported by international organisations. During the war, this aid reached us owing to well-organised logistics.
The work of firefighters, even in the peacetime, is dangerous, but on the front lines, the level of danger is much greater. Firefighters wear bulletproof vests under their Nomex, special non-flammable clothing. They are called to action not through phone calls, as phones often don't work, but by people who arrive at their headquarters while the shelling is still taking place, because people could still be inside the building that was hit. They wear helmets, but not all of them are bulletproof. They use combat vehicles that are designed to carry water and equipment. The vehicle's sides are made out of thin sheets of metal and are by no means armored vehicles and will be pierced by any bullet or shrapnel.
We are still working, and we will continue to work. As they say, Kharkiv cannot be broken. Kharkiv withstands constant attacks, but unfortunately both civilians and uniformed personnel are killed every day.
As of now, most missions involve combating the consequences of the Russian aggression. Sometimes a house cut off from utilities will catch fire due to people trying to heat it using makeshift stoves, but such situations are rare. A fire is a fire. Technically, extinguishing it in peacetime and war is the same, but when missiles and rockets are flying overhead, I don't think you can call it the same.
We're now in a village on the front line, right after enemy shelling destroyed a local store and killed many people. As rescuers, we arrived on the scene and pulled the bodies out from under the rubble. Unfortunately, a child was killed. Such tragedies happen every day in the Kharkiv region.
In early April, after an initial wave of Russian drone strikes against Kharkiv, firefighters began rescue and firefighting operations. Unfortunately, shortly after, the same apartment building where the firefighters were working was hit again. 3 firefighters died. One of them was 52-year-old Vladislav Logvinov, whose son Volodymyr was working a few buildings away.
I'm motivated by the fact that we must constantly work, do our job, rescue people, put out fires, remove debris and clear mines. Rescuers have been working like this throughout the entire Russian invasion.
I guess it's safe to say that we're quite lucky to live on this planet. On a rare occasion, the Earth aligns perfectly with the Moon and the Sun, creating a magical spectacle for all to enjoy, a total solar eclipse. For a few minutes, day becomes night. It's a beautiful, fascinating sight for all, but some take it to the next level. Meet the eclipse chasers, people who travel across continents and oceans to experience as many solar eclipses as possible.
Some guys here say it's their 10th eclipse. For me, it's my second. The first was in '99 when I went to Austria.
I've been chasing solar eclipses since 2008. This was my 6th eclipse, and the 5th successful one. The longest one this century, which happened in China in 2009, hid behind clouds, and I didn't get to see anything. So this was the 5th solar eclipse I saw without a cloud in the sky, and well, what can I say? Definitely not the last. This phenomenon is totally addictive. You just need to see it once and you'll keep chasing it your whole life. Even my 10-year-old daughter caught the bug. As she saw the eclipse, the first thing she said was, "Dad, in 2026, I'm going to Spain with you."
Who's excited the eclipse is coming? The eclipse is coming, the eclipse is coming. I've seen 20 all over the world. All 7 continents.
It's just such a feeling in my soul that I'm so grateful to be there and so happy to see it, enough that I'm sort of addicted to them. I'm addicted to that feeling of that being that, for those few seconds or minutes, being one with the universe and being really present and feeling it. And then, of course, there's always the planning for the next one. My life is measured in eclipses.
During this eclipse, I saw adult men cry. They understood the physics behind it, and yet they cried. That's what a total eclipse is. The effect is mind-blowing. It looks like something weird and scary is happening, then suddenly gets dark and cold. It's truly, truly something. Ancient Romans called an eclipse soul labyrinths, so for them, the sun was suffering, the sun was sick.
It's really easy, look. It's just a piece of tinfoil and we put a pinprick in it. And then all the sunlight comes through here and then just projects down onto that white piece of paper.
Choosing the perfect spot to observe an eclipse is difficult because you have to plan a trip across the world to a place where the moon would cast a shadow. But you can't really check the weather forecast a year in advance, and weather is crucial. So astronomy lovers use weather statistics to see what weather was like in a specific part of the world over many years. Based on that, they try to guess where the sky could be clear and where it would be cloudy.
Statistically, Texas is the lowest cloud cover in April.
But a week before the eclipse, as we were all heading to Texas, weather forecasts started actually showing Texas as one of the worst places to observe the eclipse. Humidity was coming from the Gulf of Mexico, and with it, clouds, storms, heavy rains. Everybody started frantically searching for a better spot. I bought plane tickets to the other side of the United States, to Cleveland, Ohio, to catch better weather there. But as we were about to board the plane, the weather in Ohio worsened, and we ended up driving 800 kilometers to Arkansas. There I managed to get a glimpse of the eclipse as it appeared in a small gap between the clouds, maybe around 150 kilometers wide, just enough to see the sun without a single cloud around it. Full success.
So my first one in North America was the 1991. My second one in North America was the 2017, and this will be my third. But I've been to Europe for one of them. I've now gone to Africa twice. I've gone to Australia 3 times. I've gone to Antarctica twice. I've gone to Asia 3 times. I think that counts for Indonesia. We were in the middle of the Atlantic or the middle of the Pacific. It wasn't on land anywhere.
One of the phenomena accompanying a solar eclipse is the shadow cast by trees. It's a projection that was noticed by Aristotle, so I came just to take a picture of this phenomena. Well, not really Aristotle. There's a para-Aristotelian text where a lot of great questions are asked and very dumb answers are given. One of the questions is, why is that during a solar eclipse under a tree, I think that even specified under a Platanus, little crescents are showing? And why does the shape of what's projected on the ground not correspond to the shapes of holes that the light goes through? It's the first known description of this optical phenomena. It is very rare. It is very rare. The absolute majority of people have never seen an eclipse and will never see one. The chance that an eclipse will happen exactly where one lives during one's lifetime is below 5%, and then counting the weather, I'm talking about a total eclipse. And then you have to remember, when a partial eclipse happens, it's easy to miss. The only chance to even notice a partial eclipse is if clouds align perfectly to make it visible that the sun is in full, or through the camera obscura phenomena, or as Americans say, pinhole. In ancient times, most people would only have heard of it from literature. And definitely, ancient Egyptian priests, like from the novels of Bolesław Prus, wouldn't have been able to predict an eclipse. The first solar eclipse that humans were able to predict was in the early 18th century. It was known as Halley's eclipse. It went through England, including London. It's interesting to read what was happening in England at the time. It was a massive event. It was the first time in history that people knew what to expect, the first time people went through it together.
Theoretically, this phenomenon has to happen 3 or 4 times a year, but at least 2 of them must be partial eclipses. And it could happen that there is no total eclipse in a given year. The last eclipse happened in April 2023 in Australia. In 2026, total eclipses will repeat in Spain, so finally in the continental part of Europe after many, many years.
But the one in Egypt in 3 years is more interesting, because there the weather is guaranteed. Here we didn't know until last minute if we'll see anything. We had to drive around Texas to find a hole in the clouds.
Then 2027, Egypt, 2030, Australia again. So yes, indeed it happens quite regularly. But let's remember, it happens in a very small section of the world, usually a strip of land about 100-150 kilometers wide. And it only lasts for either 30 seconds or a few minutes. So, for one person to see such a phenomenon is a very unique chance. For my whole life until a few days ago, I saw in total 8 minutes of eclipses. Only 8 minutes of my life. And suddenly, I added an extra 4 minutes. Exactly 4 minutes and 16 seconds. And every second counts. And during this phenomenon, things happen that are hard to explain.
The war in Gaza rages on. So far, it has claimed thousands of lives, those of the Palestinian civilians, but also of volunteers, medical personnel and journalists. We would like to bring to your attention the story of Damian Sobol, a selfless Polish volunteer who tragically died while trying to deliver aid to those in need. He was killed in an IDF strike on the World Central Kitchen convoy, together with 6 others. Take a look at Damian's story.
Damian Sobol. This name needs no introduction here in the city of Przemysl, a small town located about 12 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. You might have heard his name in recent weeks, as he was one of the 7 volunteers of the Central World Kitchen killed by the Israel Defense Forces in Gaza. I am here to find out exactly what kind of person was the so-called Angel of Przemysl. To find out more about Damian, I first went to the city hall to ask how the residents of Przemysl were reacting to the news of his death.
The residents of Przemysl were very saddened by the death of Damian. The city hall lowered the flag to half-mast. The residents spontaneously organized various events, like the Silent March in his memory. Several thousand people gathered at the Volunteers' Alley with candles and flowers. We are all very sad and in great grief.
But perhaps the most impact Damian had in Przemysl was at the train station, a major hub for Ukrainian refugees. There, I met with 2 volunteers who worked alongside Damian, helping those in need after the war broke out. I asked them to tell me what made him stand out.
That's where we first met him, over there, one of the platforms to be precise. What was Damian doing here? It's simple, he fed people.
From what I've heard, he was everywhere at the same time, right?
He was really everywhere. He was a restless soul. Wherever someone was in need, he would go there to help. He was always smiling, a wonderful person, truly.
Everyone who met Damian at least once saw his devilish amounts of strength.
Or the strength of an angel.
Exactly. He had so much strength. When we went home at 11:30 in the evening, extremely tired, he would still drive around his aid points and check if they lacked anything. He was a coordinator of the World Central Kitchen, always checking if there was enough food and water for the refugees, for the children. If there wasn't enough, he would bring more in his car. He wasn't there only in the mornings. He wasn't just calling to see if everything was there. He was here personally all day and all night, carrying packages if need be. He walked around and talked to others, and even handed out the meals himself. He fed these people, and always with a big smile on his face. We couldn't believe our eyes. We were so tired, and yet he always had the strength to help others. He was here all the time.
After providing assistance in Przemysl, Damian traveled with the World Central Kitchen charity to Turkey and Morocco to aid the victims of the earthquakes there. As he would often say, he couldn't stay in one place for long. Finally, he ended up in Gaza, where the Israel Defense Forces are waging war against Hamas terrorists, often with disregard for the civilian population. There, Damian's organizational skills and positive attitude proved especially useful.
He really was one of the purest souls I've ever met. I've witnessed him just doing what people used to say had superpowers. I've never seen anyone be able to complete the things that he would do in such complex environments with such little sleep, little food, little water. He just really was driven to save lives. I had the privilege of being able to work alongside him in places like the top of the Atlas Mountains, where the earthquake in Morocco happened, all the way down to working along firefighters in the Greece wildfires. And no matter what, no matter how many missions Damien would go on, he was always dedicated to give 100%. And his 100% was superhero standard, really, really was.
I think he knew that there is a danger, of course, but that's Damian. He was the person who was never afraid of any danger. Like I said, he did go above and beyond for everyone who needed help, so that's why he decided to do it.
On April 1st, a marked humanitarian convoy of the World Central Kitchen was struck 3 times by Israeli drones. Damian and 6 other volunteers had no chance of survival. But the residents of Przemysl have not forgotten their angel. Next to a train station in Przemysl, there is a small alley, recently called the Volunteers Alley. It's a tribute to all those who decided to help Ukrainian refugees when the war broke out. And now here is a spontaneous altar prepared by the citizens of Przemysl after the recent tragic events and the all too soon death of Damian Sobol. Every day, someone brings here a new candle, so I decided to bring one of my own, in the hopes that Damian Sobol's example will inspire others to help those in need.
And with this moving story, we conclude this episode of In Focus. Please join us same time next week and stay tuned for more here on TVP World.